I had a wonderful experience visiting Justin Winery in Paso. Scott Shirley, the head winemaker, tasted me on a wonderful selection of wines and then showed me around the property. They're a larger producer, but they're still producing world-class Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, and a little bit of Viognier on property. Their isosceles, absolutely my favorite, and I could see drinking their Justin Cabernet on a nightly basis. Formerly, Scott, he was 8 years head enologist at Opus One in Napa Valley. He's a low-key, generous guy. We spent about an hour and a half together, and he tasted me on a great selection of the Justin wines. I could see drinking the Justin Cabernet on a daily basis. It has great blackberry and currant fruit to it with a little undertone of chocolate finish. I didn't know what to expect arriving at Justin Winery. I had never been there before, and most of the places in Paso were pretty low-key, kind of mom and pop places. Justin, not too long ago, was bought out by Fuji Water. However, they have a history of producing phenomenal wines, and they definitely didn't disappoint.
I'm Scott Shirley, winemaker for Justin Vineyards and Winery in Paso Robles, California. So 2012 was my first vintage in Paso Robles, and prior to that I'd been making wine in Napa Valley for 13 years. My background actually is in biochemistry. I went to school at UC Davis, took an introductory course in winemaking, fell in love with the art of winemaking, and decided to make a go of it, and turned it into a career. So I worked in a lab for 2 years in the Central Valley and really became excited about the art of blending and the cyclical nature of winemaking, having to work with Mother Nature each year and the fruit that you're given depending on the growing conditions of that year. So I really trained my palate at Opus One, sitting at the blending table with Tim Mondavi and Patrick Leon from Chateau Mouton Rothschild, and that's where I really learned how to create a world-class Bordeaux-style blend. I was the enologist on the winemaking team at Opus One for 6 years before moving to the Hess collection on Mount Veeder and working with mountain fruit for 7 years. And it's exciting for me as a winemaker to work with a different vineyard site and learn the different personalities or idiosyncrasies of each individual vineyard block. So 2014 was my third harvest in Paso Robles, and I don't think that Paso Robles is necessarily better than Napa Valley or Bordeaux. It's just different, and learning the personalities, as I mentioned, of each vineyard site is what really excites me as a winemaker. I do believe that Paso Robles is the most exciting up-and-coming appellation in the United States, so it's a fun and rewarding to be a part of that as Paso gains recognition as a quality spot for quality wine grapes. Well, in order to make great wine, you need three things, and that's the climate, the soils, and the people. So the climate here in Paso is ideal for Bordeaux varieties. We have very hot days during the summer, so it's not unusual for us to experience week-long heat spells of over 100 degrees, but then the nights are very cold. So we're in close proximity to the ocean, only about seven miles as the crow flies from Justin to the Pacific Ocean, and we'll get winds that come in around 5 p.m. off the ocean that will drop the temperature by 50 degrees. So it'll be 100 during the day, and then it'll drop down to 50 degrees over the course of an hour, and that allows the vines to recover overnight. So we want to stress the vines. We have great soils for that. Steep hillsides with limestone calcareous soils, good drainage so that the vines aren't concentrating on their vegetal growth. They just have sufficient canopy to protect the fruit, but then the warm days allow the fruit to ripen, and then the cool nights allow the grapes to retain their acidity, which is necessary for longevity in the wine. And then the diurnal shift is what's important for the grapevines in order for them to recover from that stress of the heat during the day.
Now, tell me that word again. What is that?
Diurnal. So that's the shift or the change in temperature between daytime and nighttime. So I mentioned the third component of being the people. And so we were speaking earlier about why I moved to Paso Robles. It is an astounding place to be growing Cabernet Sauvignon and Bordeaux varieties, but it's really the community here. It is a small town, rural atmosphere, definitely a farm region. People are growing grapes here because they love working with the land. And it's really that commitment to quality and the people here that are passionate about their craft, our artisanal winemaking techniques, but really the sense of camaraderie that we have amongst the winemakers. It's a very close-knit circle of friends really making wine here and striving to do our best.
I was before here I was at Lenny Coloto and talking to Matt, and he said, you know, most of the year you guys are going by, you're waving hello to each other as you're you know, getting your mail or bring your kids to school or whatever, but then there's a time during the harvest that you all get together. We're sitting here and I can see that, you know, the canopies are not full anymore. Tell me about the harvest this year a little bit.
And Matt throws a great harvest party.
That's
too.
what I hear. Yeah, that's what I hear. Absolutely.
With, live music and food, and
right,
so,
right.
It's nice to be able to share kind of the experience of harvest, of the long days, so 6 or 7 days a week, 14, 16-hour days. And at the end of harvest, we take a big sigh of relief and congratulate each other on the hard work, and we'll often go over to each other's wineries and taste the finished product out of barrel and see what they did with the fruit this year.
Sure.
How they dealt with the weather. 2014 was our third successive year of drought, and so the vines responded by producing a small crop with tiny berries. So I'd say that 2014 was the year of the tiny berry. However, that's been true for the last 3 years. So that's good for concentration of flavors. With the small berry, you have more skin per juice ratio, and the skin is where you get the color and the flavors for Cabernet Sauvignon. So really tiny Cabernet Sauvignon berry with thick skins is going to give you more flavor, but more tannins as well. And so as a winemaker, I don't try to manipulate the fruit once it enters the winery and in the fermentation vessels, but I do make conscientious changes to the fermentation practices depending on how the fruit tasted in the vineyard. So no vineyard block is picked until I've walked the rows and tasted the fruit myself. All the fruit is hand harvested, regardless of whether it's for our top tier Isosceles Reserve blend or for our core Cabernet Sauvignon that's distributed across the United States and available in supermarkets. Every single vineyard block I've tasted and made a picking decision for, and everything is hand-picked into half-ton picking bins so that the fruit doesn't crush itself under its own weight while it's traveling from the vineyard to the winery for crushing.
That's very unusual given the production size that you guys have.
Yes,
but it really is.
It's really that attention to detail and care that makes our wines exceptional. Regardless of which blend, all the fruit is treated the same way for quality's sake. So we've recently purchased and are developing 300 new acres that are near the estate, and that's really to improve quality and consistency of the finished wines. And with 30 years of experience growing fruit here in Paso Robles, we've learned which varieties, which clones, which rootstocks work best given the soils and the climate that we have here. And so we've planted primarily Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot, which are the 3 Bordeaux varieties that make up our Isosceles blend. So my wife is a chef, so it's nice to
CIA trained chef as well.
Bring my work home with me.
Right.
So I can call her and see what we're having for dinner and bring the appropriate wine home. And so we do make Sauvignon Blanc and Viognier, Chardonnay, and plenty of Bordeaux blends with isosceles and justification with different flavor profiles that I can usually match a wine with whatever we're having for dinner. And our executive chef here at Justin does a fabulous job in reverse of matching the plates with the wines. So I can usually find a Justin wine that I would like to have, and it's fun for me to check up on the wines and see how they're evolving in the bottle. Well, I mentioned that I like to use Cabernet Franc in a lot of the blends, and that's not a variety that I got to work with much in Napa, because in Napa, Cab is king, so that's really what most of the wineries are focused on. Whereas here, Cabernet Franc plays a vital role in a lot of our blends, especially isosceles and justification. So Cabernet Franc can have a very floral nose, black pepper or sweet tobacco. And so I have our justification in the glass right now. And if I were a Cabernet Sauvignon vine, this is where I'd want to be planted. These new sites that we've developed with the limestone soils and the steep hillsides are amazing for stressing the vines, and really the Cabernet Franc is my secret ingredient for the blends. I don't want to make 100% varietal Cab Franc because it plays such a crucial role in all of my other Bordeaux blends. Well, you can join the Wine Society online at justinwine.com, and we have special events for our Wine Society members, so we also throw great parties here. We have an event coming up this week in our holiday open house, but then we'll also have our biggest event is our gala, which is the first weekend in August every year, where we'll invite all of our Wine Society members to the winery and have tastings throughout the caves that are on site of our current releases, have live music and food, and really a social atmosphere where we invite all of our Wine Society members to come and join in a celebration before harvest starts each year. All of our Wine Society members really are ambassadors for the brand because they really believe in our wines as much as we do. And that's the best way to sell the wine, is to have friends recommend us to other friends. So the caves were built in 2003. Justin Baldwin founded the estate in the early 80s. And the caves allow a place for the wine to rest in barrels, undisturbed, stacked in pyramids, so the wine does not move out of those pyramids for an entire year. Depending on the wine program, the blends may stay in barrel from anywhere 14 to 24 months. So our Isosceles Reserve and Isosceles, our flagship wine, stay in barrel from 21 to 24 months, and 12 months of those are spent in pyramid in the caves before we have to bring in the new vintage. And we'll have the tastings for our gala or for the holiday open house in those caves. So it's fun to invite everyone back each year to see each other and taste the new releases. The reserve is on allocation only, so it's 3 bottles per Wine Society member. And so I think it's up around 2,000 cases now.
That's pretty small.
It's the best of the best. It's choosing my favorite barrels from my favorite barrel lots. The joy comes from sharing it with friends and people that visit the winery. And I'm certain that anyone who comes to the winery, I can find a wine that they're going to like. We have enough different styles and different wine programs or labels that I'll find something that you like.